Madam President.
Senator from Missouri.
Madam President, first of all, on the business before us today, we want to be sure and continue to remember that if you are unemployed, if you do lose your job today or tomorrow or next week, in every state, you immediately qualify for 6 months of unemployment. In states that have high unemployment, you immediately qualify for additional 13 to 20 weeks. There are really two different debates going on here today. One is this really a long-term plan or a long-term policy? I would suggest, Madam President, if this Congress and the administration spent the kind of effort and time on what it takes to create private sector jobs or encourage an environment where that happens, we'd be spending our time much more wisely than we are continuing to perpetuate a program that the majority would suggest shouldn't even be paid for, and many would suggest is just not a program at all. Now, other things that are affecting our economy is why I came to the floor today, and there are a number of them, from constant talking about more taxes to higher utility bills to more regulation to obviously this overwhelming discussion about health care. I noticed the majority leader this weekend said that roughly a third of all the people that have been added to the insured rolls because of the Affordable Health Care Act were because of a bill I introduced in 2009 that would allow dependents or children to stay on their family policies longer. Now, I was the only one, Madam President, that introduced that bill in the House. I don't think it was introduced in the Senate. I thought it was a good idea then. I think it's a good idea now, and apparently it's such a good idea that a third of all the people that have insurance that didn't have insurance before are just because of that bill. I've got the bill before me. It was House Resolution 3887. It's 3.5 pages that could have passed by itself, not 2,700 pages, 3.5 pages that would have added a third of all the people the majority leader of the Senate said have been added because of the Affordable Health Care Act. No taxpayer money involved. 3.5 pages that wouldn't have disrupted anybody else's insurance. There were other solutions out there that would have made a lot more sense. I'm tired of hearing from the administration that nobody else had any other ideas. Apparently my idea was 1/3 of all the people that have been added to insurance, according to the majority leader. So apparently I had a third of all the ideas, and they were in 3.5 legislative pages with no taxpayer cost. Just as I suspect is the case with every senator, I'm getting letters, postings on our Facebook page, contacts through all of the social media every day from Missourians who are saying that this is just not working out like they thought it was going to work out. At Ozarks Technical Community College in Springfield, Missouri, my hometown, the adjunct faculty there, as is the case in many community colleges, has taught an awful lot of the courses. I think about 58% of the courses taught are taught by not full-time faculty members, but part-time faculty members. The problem is those faculty members are now more part-time than they were before. Many of them were teaching 30 credit hours per year prior to this year, but largely because of the Affordable Care Act, they're now teaching 24 credit hours. So they lost that percentage of their work, that percentage of their pay, that percentage of their ability to work with and be dedicated to students. According to the Springfield newspaper, the Affordable Care Act is one of the reasons that those faculty members, 58% of all the credit hours taught by people, many of whom were teaching 30 credit hours, now teaching 24 credit hours. And there's only one reason that they're working 24 hours a week instead of 30, and that's because 30 is the point where benefits, according to the Affordable Care Act, have to be offered at a level that is defined by the Affordable Care Act, not defined by the community college. In fact, some community colleges in America, I'm sure, gave some benefits before for people who were part of the adjunct faculty, just not the benefits that the federal government appears to think are absolutely necessary. Let me just go through a few of the people that have reached out to our office in recent days. Jeffrey at Blue Springs, Missouri, is a small business owner who offers health care benefits to his employees, But what Jeffrey says is, quote, it feels like a bait and switch. Get everyone to drop the coverage they liked and then stick it to them once company-provided health care is no longer available. I'm asking people when I'm home, as I was so much of the break that we just had, what are you doing with your health care? And employer after employer who doesn't have 50 employees, who isn't impacted by this, is just saying, I think the government is about to take this over, and before they get in, I'm getting out. The 12 people at the dentist office, the 36 people at the radio station, either losing their health care this January 1 or already know they're going to lose it next January 1, and the only reason is the so-called Affordable Health Care Act. Marcia at Avaz, Missouri, has 3 children, all under the age of 5. Her husband's employer has been informed that because of Obamacare, they'll have to absorb more than $1 million in order to keep providing insurance for their employees. Now, the employer is still trying to do that, but the coverage isn't what it was. The deductible's higher than it was, and one of the messages is we may not be able to do this much longer. Sabra at Purdy, Missouri, and her husband were notified that they'll lose their health care and did lose their health care on December 31 because of the Health Care Act. She says, we live on less than $14,000. Now we're at a point where we have to make a choice. Food, medication, both of which I can no longer afford, but we don't have health care any longer. Teresa at Joplin, Missouri's husband lost his coverage on December 31. When she tried to sign up at healthcare.gov, she was told they were ineligible because they were incarcerated. Turns out, neither of them have ever been arrested or incarcerated at all, but they were ineligible because they were incarcerated. I guess the greater point there is he lost his health care. She wouldn't have had to be on healthcare.gov and find out that, much to her surprise, the government believes she's incarcerated if her husband hadn't lost his health care at work. Melanie from St. Charles, Missouri, is a single mother of 3. Her employers cut her hours because, again, of Obamacare. She is no longer able to work more than 28 hours a week and had to find 2 additional part-time jobs to make up for the job she lost. Here's what she says. She says, I feel like the government is working against me, and I'm the person they say they're trying to help, according to Melanie at St. Charles, Missouri. Jean in St. Louis says her insurance was canceled because of the president's health care plan. The most similar plan she could find in the exchange, similar to the one she had before, cost $775 per month, more than double what she was paying before the Affordable Health Care Act. She says, why did we break a health care system that allowed people to find what they needed instead of just government deciding what you need? Jefferson City Schools in the state capital in our state says that the health care plan will cost their school district $150,000. They're not having to pay insurance for substitute teachers that they didn't pay before. Now, there are people, I'm sure, listening to this will think, well, that's fine. They're paying for substitute teachers. But many of those substitute teachers are no longer are allowed to work 30 hours in school districts all over America. And others are in districts like this one where it just cost $150,000 more than it did. Now, the district officials in the article I read didn't go as far as to say the federal government is hurting more than it's helping, but they did point out that $150,000 is about 3 teachers, 3 full-time teachers that they won't hire that they might have been able to hire otherwise. Barbara in Novinger, Missouri says that her husband and she no longer have health care. For the first time in 50 years, my husband and I do not have health care. My hours have been reduced from 40 to 28 a week, and they eliminated my insurance at work because they don't have to give it to me anymore. You know, interestingly, employers that for years provided insurance because they thought it was the right thing to do and the competitive thing to do, take a different view of this when the government begins to tell you what you have to do. I think it's one of the most interesting applications of the health care law. When the government begins to tell you what you have to do, then suddenly it's okay not to do anything except what you have to do. And how do you meet that criteria? How do you draw that line? You have people work less than 30 hours. You don't create new jobs. You outsource your work. Let me give you 3 or 4 more examples as I finish up here with my time on the floor. Sandra in Springfield is upset that her health care plan will require them to have pediatric dentistry and maternity care. She says, I'm upset that my health plan will require my husband and I to have pediatric dentistry and maternity care that we simply do not need. I don't know how many letters all of us have received like that. These benefits, there's supposedly better insurance than you had for a whole lot of people, are just simply benefits you don't need. So suddenly you're paying for benefits you don't need, and people who don't have insurance can get insurance once they get sick. How is that supposed to make any kind of economic sense or healthcare sense? Mark in Chesterfield, Missouri says his plan was canceled because his plan, back to my point I suppose, his plan didn't meet the requirements of the president's health care plan. Here's what he says: my current plan will no longer be offered after December of 2014. This is a direct contradiction to President Obama's promise that I could keep my plan if I liked it. You know, some people lost their insurance on December 31 of last year. Other people have already been told they're going to lose their insurance December 31 of next year. And here from West Plains, somebody who works at the Ozarks Medical Center says, we are a sole community provider with the closest hospital providing the same level of care to be over 100 miles away. The loss of the health care system that we've had will devastate the economics of this community and surrounding communities. What we're going to find here, Madam President, is a system that is not designed to meet the needs of the people of the country. What we could have done is give them more choices to figure out what they needed to meet their needs, instead of coming up with a system that just simply is going to leave so many people that had insurance 2 years ago without insurance 2 years from now. Surely that wasn't the goal, but the people had better wake up in this chamber and in Washington, D.C. and figure out whether that was the goal or not. It's going to be the result if we don't do something about it. And the best thing to do about it would be start over now that we've learned all we've learned over the last 4 years, and make the changes to the best healthcare system in the world that will make it even better and work for more people. And I would yield the floor